Welcome to the TRXL podcast. I'm Evan Troxel, and in this episode, I welcome Antonio González Viegas. Antonio is a trained architect from Spain who made a pivot we're hearing a lot more about these days. He taught himself to code. It started at Sipe, a Spanish BIM software company where he was hired as a product manager. You know, the guy who tells programmers what to build. But breakfast with senior developers changed his trajectory forever. He eventually launched IFC.js, an open source web-based viewer for the IFC file format that attracted real companies solving real problems, and that led him to found That Open Company, which is building the free open source infrastructure layer that anyone can use to create BIM software. That Open Company operates on a simple but counterintuitive idea: solve the hard foundational problems that every BIM software developer has to solve, which is geometry engines, IFC parsing, 3D rendering in the browser, interoperability, and then give it all away under an MIT license. No permission required, and no credit to the developer needed. The business model isn't the code, it's actually the expertise, the training, and the consulting on top of it. Over 1,000 companies are already building on what they've made, including some of the biggest names in tech. In this episode, we explore the open source infrastructure argument for the future of AEC software. We talk about why the construction industry has forced every software vendor to reinvent the wheel from scratch, how AI has become a force multiplier that's compressing years of development into weeks, and what that means for firms and the market, when a 5-person team can now build what used to require hundreds, if not thousands, of engineers. Antonio coined the phrase nuclear bomb moment during our discussion to describe where BIM software development stands right now, and it's up to you to decide if it's the right framing. Have no doubt, the technical barriers that protected legacy vendors for decades are collapsing fast, not because they got weaker, but because the tools available to everyone got dramatically stronger. It's literally the definition of democratization. What's less clear is whether the practice of architecture will move fast enough to take advantage of that shift, or whether firms will keep adapting new tools to old workflows and miss the real opportunity. Antonio's perspective on this is pointed, grounded in real experience, and worth sitting with. As usual, there's an extensive amount of additional information in the show notes, so please be sure to check that out. You can find them directly in your podcast app if you're a paid supporter of TRXL Plus, and if you're a free member, you can find them over at the website, which is TRXL.co. So without further ado, I bring you my very interesting conversation with Antonio González Viegas. Antonio, welcome to the podcast. Great to have you.
Oh, thank you very much for the invitation.
So you have a really interesting kind of, interesting projects, interesting perspective on the industry and with what you are doing. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you. So I would love to hear a bit of your story. And I think to kick that off, I just want to ask you, like, what made you decide to learn to code? Because that's what you spend your time doing now, besides advocating and ranting and educating the audience out there about what's going on in the technology side of AEC.
Yeah. It's actually a weird story because if you met me back when I was studying architecture at the university and you told me, hey, you're going to be coding for a living, I probably would have said, no, I want to be an architect. I'm not interested in coding at all. I had never coded before. And for me, I don't know, it was just something in the background. And yes, I saw the hackers in the movies, but really never sparked the interest. But then when I finished the architectural degree, I got hired by a BIM software company here in Spain called Sipe. Sipe, I never know how to pronounce that. It's Sipe in Spanish. I think they are the biggest BIM software company here in Spain. And I was hired as a product person because, when you build software for architects, you need people that know how to make software, but then you also need people that know how architects work or how to compute a structure or how to design a bridge, things like that. So I was supposed to tell the programmers what to do. But then I don't know if fortunately or unfortunately, I was having breakfast every day with the senior programmers of the company, and I very quickly realized that their job was more fun than my job. So I said, okay, let's give it a try. Yeah. And to be honest, I was just playing around. I didn't have big plans. I was just, hey, this sounds fun and this might give me more job opportunities. So I decided to learn to code. And I actually started with the Revit API because I thought, okay, I know Revit, so I already know how the problem, or at least I will be playing in a familiar playground. And then I can learn to code things on top of that. And then very quickly I became frustrated because the only way to show what I did to my friends and family was to, open a Revit instance and show them, which is not very convenient. So I very quickly switched to web programming. And then I started a hobby project called IFC.js, which the only goal of learning how to make a 3D IFC viewer. And then it snowballed and people started gathering around me. So I was just a guy pretending to know how to code. So I just played along with everyone else. And at some point I was the guy leading this project.
What did IFC.js like give the audience who isn't familiar with that an idea of the magnitude of what that was doing for you?
Yes. So, IFC is the open standard that we have in the construction industry to exchange data between BIM softwares of different vendors. The same way that we have, DXL for OBJ or GLTF for other purposes, we have IFC. More or less, I know that there will be people saying IFC is a data schema, it's not a format. Okay, yes. But summarizing, we have IFC. And IFC is something that I was working with very intensely as a product owner in CIPE because, when you are not one of the big guys, you need to be able to communicate with them. And the only way to communicate with them is people working in Revit exporting IFC file so that you can read it and you can work with it and build stuff on top of it. And because I was working with it every day, I thought it would be fun to create 3D software on top of that format. It was an open format, so it's text-based, so I could actually open it with code and read it and interpret it and everything. And it was basically, I don't know why I started, but I thought it would be fun. And it was fun. It was also painful when, the project, when it became serious, it also became challenging. That IFC.js was my attempt to create 3D BIM software for the sake of learning. And what happened was that there were many companies out there which had problems reading and writing IFC files, and they thought my work useful. So they reached out and they wanted to use it. And because I was making everything open source, it turns out that the code I was writing for the sake of learning was useful for, real companies building real software and everything. And that's how it started and how it evolved.
And you said you were doing this all like on the web, right? So, I mean, this was a web 3D viewer for IFC file format, right? So why the web? Why not a desktop application?
Yeah, actually it was, I think, an act of, I was pretty frustrated with Revit because I really wanted to show, learning to code is fun, but it's also hard. It takes time.
And there was no vibe coding when you did this, right? Like what year are we talking about? Because I think about like the kind of the fun, especially for non-coders, with the whole vibe coding thing that's going on now. It's like, oh, I mean, I can just ask it what to do and it'll do it. Like that didn't exist when you were doing this.
No. That didn't exist, unfortunately. Today it's a lot easier.
Yeah. So what year? When were you doing this?
I was doing this and I started in 2020, I think.
Okay.
2021, something like that. So basically the only way was either in YouTube or in Udemy, how to create a web page. And then in parallel, Googling how to create a 3D application on the web. And then watching multiple tutorials from multiple sources and, trying to stitch everything together somehow.
And you were trained as an architect, right? So,
yes.
I mean, this is a foreign language to you, just like any other language would be. Like coding it was a foreign language. I mean, you had been dabbling and obviously working at a software company kind of opened the door for that for you.
it is foreign, but also I would say that if you take a generic software engineer and you put that person to write them software, that will also be foreign to a certain extent, because that person doesn't know how a building works, doesn't know the parts of the building, so
So they're
I would
really
say
relying on that product manager position that you were in, right? Because you are usually the liaison, the link between the vertical, the industry that they're trying to serve and write the application for, and what they're doing as a developer.
yes, there's, I don't know if you know Dilbert, the comic strip, the author that
Oh, Dilbert? Yeah.
Dilbert, yeah. And that guy has a book called How to Fail at Almost Everything in Life and Still Succeed. And basically what he says is that being the best in something is really hard. At the moment you have like 2 or 3 skills, it's easy to shine because there's not that many people doing that. So I guess I accidentally did that. I was architect but also developer.
Okay. Funny. So I want to kind of do a little bit of foreshadowing here so that we can, because the audience, I think, for this podcast is maybe there's not 100% alignment like with who your audience is, right? So I want to get that straight from you so that I fully understand that. So with what you're doing now, do a little bit, tell us what you're doing now. And because obviously the story has evolved from IFC.js to what you're doing now, and who the audience is for that. And because there's obviously developer audience for what you're doing now, but I'm also wondering if there is people in firms as a potential audience for you, and then give them an idea of why it's important to hear this story today in this episode.
Yes. So one thing that I realized when I started building software is that every BIM software company has either acquired or developed their technology from scratch, which sound obvious, but if you apply this same principle to any other industry, it's absolutely insane. It's like saying every car company has invented the car from scratch, from inventing the wheel to inventing the last screw in the engine. And the biggest consequence of this is that it is very hard for new players to compete, because you are basically having to reinvent the wheel and reinvent all the things and solve all the same problems again and compete against someone that has been solving this problem since the 90s. So of course it's very hard to, even if you raise millions, even if you assemble a team of X, whatever, it's hard, right? So I thought, what if, then when I realized this, I thought, what if I solve the same problems that people have been solving in our industry over and over and over again in private and selling it as an end user application, but instead of selling it as an end user application like Navisworks or whatever, I make them free and open source so that other developers can use it as a stepping stone and not having to start from scratch every time that they make BIM software. And I actually took this idea from the video game industry. You know that nowadays anyone can make a video game, not because of vibe coding. I mean, of course, vibe coding helps, but because we have video game engines like Unreal Engine and Unity and Godot and many others. And the idea behind these engines is, regardless of the video game you make, you always need the same foundational pieces. You always need a graphics engine. You always need a physics engine. The pieces that are hard to make. The pieces where you need people that know math and low-level graphics and the algebra. Expensive people usually, and rare to find. But with a video game engine, all these pieces are solved so that you can focus in making the things that add value to your product. Because nobody buys a game for the graphics engine, or nobody buys a game they buy the game for the experience that it gives you, right? So
Right.
I thought
Nobody cares what the end user doesn't really care what the graphics engine is, right?
Exactly. So I thought, what if we had the same pieces that these big vendors have privately and they used to, what if they were open and available and free so that anyone can build on top? My guess was and still is that then we will have a market where it's a lot easier to compete, and we will see more players showing up with more ideas and more chances of one of them or many of them to succeed. And in a market where when we have more players, that usually means more power to the end users because you get more choices and you get the opposite of an oligopoly, right? So that's the core idea.
This episode is made possible with support from Avail. Is your firm managing architectural, landscape, interiors, and engineering content? Avail's all-in-one content management solution stretches across all disciplines, file types, and content locations so production teams can find everything they need all in one place. Thanks to Avail's desktop application and Revit, AutoCAD, and Civil 3D plugins, teams can consistently find and reuse all types of content from specifications and calculations to 3D models and plans. As a result, standards-compliant models and drawings are easier to create, the documentation process is less chaotic, new hires are easier to onboard, and projects are delivered faster with fewer errors. Visit getavail.com to request a demo. That's getavail.com to request a demo. My thanks to Avail for supporting this episode of the TRXL podcast. Now let's get back to the conversation. Yeah, right. So let's talk about that free part and that open source part, because how do you survive, Antonio, in this situation? I mean, there obviously are open source projects that are still funded in various ways, and obviously people have to survive through this process. So talk about how that's working for you.
Yes, great question. And especially because in the world of open source, you find many people that are like very radical regarding money in general. I always say that there are two kinds of people in open source, the missionaries and the mercenaries. And I'm definitely a mercenary. Like, if I don't have anything again. And it's actually not that hard because there are many businesses in which you make something free and open that gives value, like podcast or like, I don't know, writing content in a newsletter, and that giving that free value gives you access to people, and then you can sell all the things to that people, right? And that's the core idea of the business of that open company. We have the code, which is free and open, and then we teach people to code so that they learn exactly the same things that they needed to learn in order to make the leap from architect to professional BIM software developer. Or we help companies using our technology because more and more companies are using our technology now. I think that we are over 1,000 companies, not people.
Yeah.
And
Wow,
some of
that's
these
awesome.
companies, and some of these companies want our help because they want us to sit down with them and make the features that they need, and they pay us for that because it's cheaper than hiring someone and expecting a random person to do it for them than hiring us because we are the experts in the area. And we are basically bootstrapping the whole thing, and we pay the full salary of the 10 people that we have today, I think, and we are growing organically. I know it's a lot less sexy than going venture capital and raising 15 million and then hiring a full team. But I also think it's healthier because it forces you to have a business mindset from day one. And, everyone knows how to spend money, but the only important thing for a business is to sell. If you don't sell, you're in cardiac arrest and you will eventually die when the money runs out. Except you are a super big unicorn like Uber or something like that. Assuming that we don't have things like that in our industry because I don't know. That's how we do it, and we are doing great so far. We are growing. We'll see.
Nice. I mean, I like that sustainable nature of what you're talking about. And so just to be clear, the name of the company is That Open Company, okay? Because
Yes.
when you say it in a sentence, it's like that open company out there, that one over there. I don't know what. Yeah, no, it's the name of the company, That Open Company, and it's based on those ideals of open source and building something that people can use to build their applications upon.
Yes. And BIM has a fun story because when we were thinking about that, we want something different because I felt that every time that you go to a BIM conference, all the companies have a very similar name, like BIMTech or Bumetic. Something, they sound very similar. And also, when you look at the pitches, they also sound very similar. I mean, we wanted to do something different, and we thought, okay, let's try something different. I don't know if it's better or worse, but I think it helps getting us noticed.
Yeah. Well, you said you have 1,000 different companies that are using what you're building. And so can you give an idea of like who are those types of companies? Are they other software developers? Are they people in firms? Are they firms? Like tell us how that's kind of working throughout the industry.
Yes. Yes, I would say that there are mainly three big groups. The first group is startups, because for a startup, what we do is great because they don't have to code it, so they save those millions raised by venture capital to do other things, to whatever. So the startups usually love us. Then we have bigger or older or more established IT companies. Like, I don't know, we have worked we're working now with RIP. I don't know if you know RIP.
Yes.
Yeah. We have worked with, or yes, we have worked with Alplan from the Nemetschek group. Other company using our technology is Cesium or Cesium. I never know how to pronounce that in English. Sorry, if you the GIS company. They are using our technology to read and write IFC. So, and also other big IT companies from outside and inside from our industry, because for example, 2 years ago, there was this tender to digitize all the roads from the country here in Spain. And the company that won that tender was Iberus. It's a huge IT company. I don't know, like 3,000 people, 4,000 people, a multi-million tender. And they decided to use our technology to build that. So we also work with them there. And the third group is basically engineering/construction companies trying to build their own software to solve the problems that no vendor is solving right now. And one example is Acciona, for instance, the construction company. We have also worked with Ferrovial. But to give you like a summary, until now, we haven't done any end user software. So therefore, all the people that we work with are either developers or geeks, basically.
Gotcha. Okay, so let's talk about what they're using now. So you started going down the path of web development, IFC.js. Now, where are you with that open company?
Now, this is an interesting question, because if you asked me last year, the answer would be very different, because now now, everyone is talking about AI and saying, oh, look, an MCP server for Revit or an automation. And what I'm seeing now is that AI is going to collapse the price of, no, I don't know if the price, but the value of making software in the construction industry. Because, yearly we make 4 releases, and each release is a huge thing. Like, I don't know, last year we released Fragments, our own BIM format that is open source, but allows us to open millions of objects in 3D in a browser in seconds. Another release was an edit API to be able to edit that's native in a browser.
You just say that like it's so easy, right? Like, oh yeah, it just natively renders thousands of objects in 3D in the browser in seconds. Like, it just, you're so used to it, but that's quite an amazing accomplishment.
Yeah, but this year we are seriously considering, instead of making 4 releases, making 8 or more, because we can do so much more now. We are in parallel, we are addressing reality capture, rendering millions of points of point clouds and Gaussian splats, but at the same time building a modeler on top of Fragments that we will deliver the same pieces that you would need if you wanted to make something similar to Revit from scratch easily. We are also thinking how to address the interoperability problem, which means, you work in an application and I work in another application. How can we work together and make round trips painlessly and easily without being an expert in a schema or anything? Collaboration, right? Like, how much money do companies spend in how do we collaborate? It's insane, right? So now we are addressing so many problems at the same time. Mm, we I don't know when we will have everything released, but it's getting faster. It's getting a lot faster. And yes, basically the goal is the same. Basically, reverse engineer all the pieces that you would need to make any BIM software.
Mm-hmm. Wow. It's ambitious. It's ambitious.
Yeah. But it is, but we are getting there, and we are already seeing our software being used by big companies, and they are very happy. So yeah.
Well, and some of the names that you named, it seems like, I mean, there's definitely some what I would call legacy software or incumbent type software developers in there who I'm curious because now, Fragments, you're talking about a web browser, you're talking about rendering this stuff on the web versus desktop applications. Can you talk about kind of just the shift that you've seen in our industry going more towards the web and why?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, one thing that is important when making software and trying to make a business selling software is distribution. Right? Like, how do you get your product to the user? And the web is so much more convenient in distribution because it's just an URL and you open it and it works anywhere. It works in Windows, it works in Mac, it works in your phone. Every time that you use the software, there's a register that registers that you're using the software, so it's easy to track. It's easy to track. It's hard to pirate. I haven't seen anyone actually pirate a web application. It's so hard because you're basically getting controlled and monitored, right? And this is very convenient for, you also get automatic updates. You don't need to manually download 50 gigabytes of software just to get something. And now the web is getting more powerful. It is true that between 2010 and 2020, building serious BIM software in the web was our R&D. Basically, it was something that someday we will achieve, but today is definitely possible. And now we have WebGPU, which is the new web browsers. Basically, have a way to talk to your GPU, which was WebGL. Now they make a new way, which is WebGPU, which is thousands of times more powerful than that. So it is very likely that I have already seen demos where we get Unreal live graphics, real time without pre-baking directly in the browser, and it's super smooth in a phone. So, I mean, my question would be, what advantage does desktop application have when you have to build a desktop application for every operating system, and then you need to convince your user to download it and then get the updates and I don't know. I think we won't see, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we will see many companies developing desktop software anymore. Of course, they will maintain the ones they have because they have to, because they give them revenue. But all the new software will be web-based.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to be online. It reminds me of when the iPhone came out, 2007, right? And the developer story when the iPhone was released was, and you can write a web app, right? and all of the developers in 2007 were like, what? No, I'm holding my thumbs down for those who are listening. That was a huge blow to developers because they were writing software. They weren't writing websites. They weren't writing web apps back then. And wow, have things changed, right? Just because of the capabilities of what browsers have grown into in the last almost 20 years. I mean, which is crazy to think about, right? That these slabs of glass in our pockets have been around for 20 years now. And obviously coding has changed a lot in 20 years. And I'm curious for you because, I mean, the things that you're doing, I wonder, is it make it easier for you to adapt to new technologies that come up because you're on the web, or is that the same whether you were doing desktop based or web based? I'm not a developer, so I'm just genuinely curious about this because a lot of legacy software is kind of stuck in many ways because of the frameworks and the code that they've already written, right? And so it's incredibly difficult to pivot quickly, or even necessarily add new features on top of those legacy code bases. And is that any easier doing development the way that you're doing it, or kind of similar constraints in that way?
Yeah, there are actually two answers to that question. The first answer is that if you don't own all the pieces of software that you use, you don't have to maintain it all. And the maintenance of those pieces that you don't own are done automatically. For example, with 3.js, which is, let's call it like a graphics engine for the web, a very easy way to build 3D software in a web application that is free and open source. There are people maintaining it for free, making new updates for free. That's work that I don't have to do. And they are fixing bugs that I don't.
And you
need to
trust
fix.
them. You trust them.
Yeah, not just me, like literally everyone else. I
Lots
think
of
that,
people.
in fact, I think that I might be wrong. I mean, I don't have proof, but I'm pretty convinced that ACC uses 3.js and TrimbleViewer uses 3.js. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. And but they had to get 3JS, like the people who are maintaining that had to get to some level of reliability, accountability, to have that, for that trust to be there. I mean, some new developer who's vibe coding is it's gonna take a long time to get to that point.
I would say that the main reason is consistency. When you see people working relentlessly for 8 years,
Yeah.
you don't know for sure, but it's likely that they will do the same for the ninth year. It's like that. But it is actually a very interesting topic. You know that one of the biggest hacking attempts of history happened like 2 years ago, I think, with an open source project, and they used it was like an open source project for compressing files, maintained by one guy that lived, I don't know, in a cabin in the middle of the woods. And there was like an organization that actually managed to steal the project by using social engineering for years, like, I don't know, going to GitHub and writing toxic comments, and then other people came and say, oh, don't worry, I will take care of these people. And then they actually managed the guy to handle the keys of the project. And when he did that, they actually injected a reverse door, like a backdoor in there.
Wow.
Yeah. So
then people use that to compress or decompress their files, and it's basically passing this new code around.
Yeah. No, they didn't succeed because there was one guy in Microsoft that realized that the library, the beta version of the library was like, I don't know, 2% slower, and he investigated and he found the backdoors. It was something like that. But it took 4 years for them to steal the project. And I would say that the blunt answer is that open source, just like the internet, is much more fragile than we like to think. It's something that we think is there and we take it for granted, but then one day it breaks, and yeah.
Let's take a short break from the conversation to invite you to join the most influential technology leaders in the AEC industry at Confluence. Composed of in-person events and a podcast co-hosted by yours truly, Confluence is designed to foster conversations between AEC firms and technology companies so they can learn, share, and engage with each other to support industry innovation. Software company Avail, which creates content management solutions for the AEC industry, started hosting Confluence events in 2019 to understand what firms are needing, wanting, and thinking around technology. To learn more about Confluence, explore upcoming events, and listen to podcast episodes, go to confluence.getavail.com. My thanks to Confluence for supporting this episode of the TRXL Podcast. And now, let's get back to the conversation. So, I mean, you talked about your frustrations early on with having to open an instance of Revit to just show the plugins that you were working on and things like that. And then obviously there's been a lot that's happened since then with the way software development has gone and the way that customers have to deal with these institutions and the kind of what you call lock in, right? Like this idea, I mean, lots of people, not just you, call this like being locked into these various software platforms to use them because, I mean, there's lots of reasons. I used to run digital practice in a firm, and it's like, you got to retrain your staff if you want to change applications. You got to change your content library. You got to change your template. You got to change everything. You got to change what your consultants are using if you're in an architecture firm to get this kind of, collaboration and things like that. So, I mean, can you go a little bit more into what kind of your thesis is around why people should be paying attention to the work that you're doing? Because it seems to me like you have a very strong value system when it comes to how software and the industry should relate to each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. First thing I will say is that I don't think the future of the industry is free software because, yes, maybe you use free applications, but what happens the day you get a bug or the day something happens? Who are you going to call? Like, what support number do you have? Who is sitting there in a support desk to answer your call, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think that's the future. Some people think that. I don't agree with them. What I think is that if we build the common pieces, the hard pieces that everybody needs, but nobody sells, solving the hard problems once in common, problems like display millions of objects super fast in a 3D in a browser, or problems like interoperability, or problems like, if we solve them once and in the open, then it will be a lot easier for other companies to build products, paid products, plus products, I don't care, and go to the market and offer them to you. And the thesis is that the more competition, the more choices you get as an end user, and the more power you will have, because when Autodesk raises their prices in 2 years again, you will have the power to say, oh, maybe I go with this other people that is giving me something similar or better for a better price, or I don't know. If you have less options, of course, it's harder to do that.
So talk about your licensing and how you're doing it, because you say open source, right? So it sounds to me like you're letting people build paid applications on top of your free stuff.
Yes. Our license is MIT, which basically it's the easiest license. It literally means you can do anything you want with the software. You don't need to tell me, you don't need to ask for permission, you don't need to give me credit. Absolute
So you're not a
freedom.
gatekeeper in that way. You're just saying, here's what we've built. These are the common pieces that everybody needs to build these kinds of applications that the industry needs now and in the future. And I'm not going to say yes, or you don't even have to ask me if your application idea is something that I need to say yes or no to. Because that would be a huge layer of bureaucracy that you would be adding, but also you're just not interested in that at all. You want people to build.
Exactly. And actually, sometimes it's a bit frustrating because I don't know, I come across someone working in Microsoft or Amazon or one of these huge shiny companies and tell me, hey, do you know we are using your library? And I'm like, okay, I didn't know. Which makes me think,
you are leaving something on the table there, Antonio. It seems like,
but
yeah,
it's the price that I have to pay for absolute freedom.
Mm-hmm. The values shine through. So, I mean, well, yeah, go ahead.
No, but I would say that it's a trade-off. I really want everyone to be building things on top of my technology, so I just built an incentive system that makes it super convenient to do so.
Yeah.
And yes, it means that I lose certain things. Like, imagine that I give everything for free, but you are forced to log in if you want to, like, to give me your email, if you want to use what I built. That would be a first barrier. Maybe if we do that, we go from more than 1,000 companies to, I don't know, 700 companies. And that beats the goal. So it's a trade-off that I am very happy to pay.
Calculated trade-off. Yeah. So, I mean, what does opening this market up actually look like in practice? So in 5 years, I think you've already alluded to this, but what's different in, like, just say 5 years from now?
I mean, In 5 years, and this is, I cannot foresee the future, of course, and maybe I'm completely wrong, but I think that in 5 years, creating a serious BIM software, any BIM software, not just a simple BIM or even a modeler, will be as easy as creating a video game today. And how that will impact the market or the products or the prices, I don't know. But I'm pretty sure that just technologically speaking, in 5 years, we will be in that situation. And not just because of AI, but also because AI is making me go faster. It's making the 3JS guys go faster. Everyone is going faster, and that compounds. So at some point, we will catch up with the technology of the big guys.
So that's the developer story. How does that play out in firms? Like, does that mean that, well, I'm curious what you think. You talk to practitioners, right? And so they're giving you feedback, or they're telling you like the future that they want. So tell us what they're telling you.
What I feel, and again, I cannot foresee the future, is that one of the biggest problems in our industry is that we try to create monolithic software, which basically means you say, I want to build a clash detector, or I want to build a BIM modeler.
Mm-hmm.
And then you take a bunch of use cases that you think are the most common use cases. And then once you manage to build the BIM product, which is not easy at all, it takes millions and years, you go out to the market and you try to convince everyone that your product is great. But the problem is that in our industry, each project is different. Each company is different. And it's pretty likely that your software alone won't be able to solve all their problems. So for them, it's very painful because they have to buy 3, 4, 5 solutions that don't talk to each other very well.
Mm-hmm.
They pay a very expensive annual fee, and they have to train their staff to use all that, and they have to adapt their processes to be able to use the software that the market offers. I think that maybe in 5 years, we are in a position to turn the table, and instead of telling you, this is what you need, and show you my suite of applications, maybe I can ask you, what do you need? And then you tell me, and then making software is so accessible that I can actually produce something that exactly solves your problem for a price that will be probably a lot cheaper than buying a full suite of solutions where you just press one button in each application.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to see the future, but it does seem like there's going to be more options, right? And so I'm curious, I guess, how that actually plays out in firms who, like I mentioned before, have to retrain their staff, have all of these content libraries, templates, details locked in, maybe not locked in, but in these other formats that already exist. And there's also kind of that monolithic, you talked about monolithic software. There's like the monolithic thinking that just goes along, like you have to break free from the way you used to do things to doing new things, right? And that behavioral shift is difficult. It takes time, especially in big firms who are working on tens, hundreds of projects at a time for many years at a time for many of those projects, right? And so you can see why, I mean, the story about AEC has been, it's slow, right? It's slow because it is slow. Like we can't treat it like it's not slow. Like the process is going from bits to atoms, right? And that takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of humans involved in that process, and a lot of legacy, I mean, contracts and insurance and jurisdictions and permitting and reviews, and oh my gosh, you can see, like, yeah, everything about it is slow.
Yeah, and if you add the software to the mix, it's even slower because then you get a new shiny application that is BIM 2.0, and then you need to retrain all your staff to use that new BIM 2.0 application. And then you need to see how you connect that BIM 2.0 application with the rest of your BIM suite, because of course, you need more applications, and some of them might be negative, right? So yeah, it's slow, it's painful, and I hope that software being more and more accessible and easier to make will make this easier.
Yeah.
Because we will reach a point in which making your own software will be like making your own meal. It's just going to be feasible. Maybe not for everyone, maybe not for a 3-person architectural studio, but maybe there's like a small firm that has the technical capacity to offer that to certain companies that are today paying 5 licenses and 6 or 7 figures a year.
So let's talk about the players in the industry right now. Obviously, there's like the big incumbent players that have been around for a long time, right? They've been dominant, and there's a few. And then there's the new, I'm going to call them more like the middle layer of people who've been around for a few years, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know. And they've been building BIM 2.0 applications without your technology, right? And so it's difficult to get them, I would assume, to switch over, because the longer you go, the more dependent you are on what you've already built, right? So, I mean, you're actually talking about the next generation. I mean, is that who we're talking about of BIM developers, or are we talking about potentially, like you said some legacy software vendors who are actually using your tools for certain things, not for everything, right? So is there a chance that the things that you're building can get implemented in existing products in any way, or is this really something that people need to be starting from scratch with? I'm curious where you fall on that spectrum.
Again, I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know, but I think that, for instance, let's talk about modeling, like creating a BIM modeler, the new Revit, right? It's a hot topic. My guess is that if we manage to release software that is free and open source and allows anyone to create something very similar to Revit with very little effort, like in a week, let's say, because my code already gives that person all the tools, like all the families, system families, level families. Probably not families, because families are terrible and they are legacy, but yeah, you know what I mean. And if I put myself in the shoes of a person that has been offering software for BIM 2.0 for years, I mean, it's hard because I have never been in that position, but I guess that the big question would be either to succumb to the sunk cost fallacy, as you say, to say, I have been working on this too hard, I cannot throw this all away. Or to say, okay, now things have changed. Maybe I can use this, which is free and open source and maintained by Antonio and other people from the community, and focus the rest of my money in something else, in something that maybe helps me sell more or give more value to my customers. I don't know. But what I know is that moat, that thing that you build that makes it hard for other people to compete with you, if it's just a geometry engine or if it's just a set of modeling tools, that's not going to work in 2 years, I'm pretty sure. Technologically speaking, business-wise, some people might want to keep it. Others might want to switch, but yeah. We'll see, I guess. We'll find out.
Hey everyone, I want to take 30 seconds to talk about something that really matters to me. This podcast exists because I believe this industry deserves better conversations. No agenda, no corporate backing, just honest, in-depth dialogue with the people actually shaping where AEC is headed. More than 25,000 of you listen to this show, and less than 50 of you are direct supporters of what I'm doing. And I'm not saying that to make you feel guilty. I'm saying it because if this kind of independent media matters to you, if these conversations have ever changed how you think or introduced you to someone worth knowing, then the most direct way to keep it going is to become a TRXL Plus member. $12 a month, ad-free episodes, the full Leadership Edge newsletter with my deep dives and the things I don't say on the podcast, and the knowledge that you're one of the people making this possible. Head over to the website at trxl.co and click the join button. And either way, I'm really glad that you're here. Now let's get back to today's conversation. We will find out. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, for you to make a claim like, and I know you have lots of disclaimers, like you can't see the future, but wow, let's just call it a fully featured BIM application in a week, right? Like you see the potential for something like that to be totally possible.
Yeah, I mean, today people can already build, and this works with our technology. People can already build a BIM 360 or however it's called now. I don't bother to learn the new names anymore.
Forma something, yes.
Form or whatever. People can already build that with our technology, and we will keep going. And now we are going 20 times faster, which means that the work that would have taken 5 or 6 years, we will release this year. So that means that, yes, all the hard pieces that you would need to build something like Revit, and I'm working on that right now, like the walls, the windows, but not just that, also like the robustness or the hard stuff, like the history, Control-C, Control-Y, saving, loading back, what happens when you delete an element that has nested elements and then you undo. All that stuff is being written by cloud right now. I mean, not literally right now, but still working on that with cloud. And maybe I'm producing, I don't know, 3,000 lines of code per day. Wow. And it's not just gibberish, it's code that I actually read, it's code that I So it's insane. And I wonder, is there, maybe I'm in a Dunning-Kruger effect right now. Like, I have a lot of confidence because I don't know the whole problem yet, but I genuinely wonder, is there really anything that someone can code right now that I cannot with cloud? I genuinely wonder that. And not just code it, but code it like in a week. I am, because if the answer is no, like literally anything that any other new software developer has coded in any startup or legacy company is something you can write down with cloud and the right knowledge of geometry and 3D. Of course, if someone that has zero idea about geometry or 3D, whatever, try to do it's not going to work because cloud makes mistakes. And if you don't solve them, it's like, in the end of Thelma and Louise, when they get into the car and they go to the cliff, it's exactly that. But if you know what you're doing, it's literally like having a team of 20 clones writing code for you. You have an idea, you know the direction, you know the specifics, you know the architecture, and you have it in a day. What would have taken 2 months? That's it, right?
And you can have one checking the code that another one is writing, right? Like they can work together, right? So, like you said, you can have 10 different ones going at the same time, actually not all doing the same thing, but like checking each other's work and
not just that, they can even open the application and navigate in the 3D and test the tools as if they were a user. So sometimes
Well, but you bring up a super interesting point though, which is like if you know what you're doing, right? And so, I mean, you're making a case that like software developers aren't actually going to be replaced by this. They're getting superpowers basically to go, like you said, your team's going to go 20 times faster this year with the tools that are out right now. Like there's no crystal ball involved in that statement at all. You're saying like, this is how fast we're now going because of the tools that exist. I want to talk about how that applies back to practice too. I think that's a mentality, and we don't necessarily see that in practice as much. But what you're saying is like, yeah, you have to know how to solve the problems that it does create, but those problems are, I mean, they're different kinds of problems than you've solved before because you had to write those lines of code or you had to get them from somewhere else or whatever, and you had to piece it together, and now you don't have to piece it together. You're going so much faster.
Yeah, one analogy that I thought about the last week, and I think it's accurate, is that we are now, in technologically speaking, not talking about sales or business or just in terms of technology, BIM technology, we are seeing a nuclear bomb moment in BIM software because now it doesn't matter if you're a 5-people company. Now you have the capacity, if you have people that know what they are doing, and if you leverage the open source work that we do or that other people that do, you have the same technical capacity as a 2,000 people company last year. So that makes me wonder, who is going to win this new game in which we all have the same weapons and the same capacity to produce good enough software?
Yeah. Good ideas are going to win, but man, like and at the same time, the value of ideas are basically free, right? It's the execution, and what you're saying now is like everybody has the tools to execute on those ideas.
Yeah, and I also think that one thing that happens with software is that the time that you put in software and the quality that the user perceives is logarithmic, which means that yes, at the start you put some effort and the user is very happy, but then it kind of becomes flat. So when we all reach that flat part of the logarithm function, it's going to be scary because we will see teams of 20 people competing with products that are pretty much the same as products being sold by companies of 10,000 people. With the difference that, of course, in the 20 people company, they don't take weeks to make a decision. They don't have to maintain all that structure. They don't have all that command line that they have to follow. They can make a decision today and execute it tomorrow, right? And of course, this doesn't mean that the big guys will lose because they have things that the small guys don't have. They have the contracts, they have the trust, they have the inertia, they have the capital, right? I don't know, exciting times to be here, I guess.
For sure. Well, how does that translate to practice? I mean, as far as like the thinking and the behavior go. So, I mean, I had Mirko Bianchini on the show. He said something very similar to what you just said. Pablo from Heatherwick, he also said the same thing, right? I think small teams with these kinds of tools are going to be able to do things that only big teams can do right now. They basically have the resources now because of technology at their fingertips to accomplish what big teams can do. And like you said, they can do it faster because they don't take so long to make decisions, because they don't have all the layers of bureaucracy and they don't have maybe all the politics and you know, there's a lot of things, human things, that kind of get in the way. And the thing that I talked about with Mirko was this idea of, you know, he says like that there's tools there, the leverage is possible, but these aren't the tools that everybody's comfortable with using. And so therefore, you know, the people who are just kind of watching from the sidelines are definitely at a disadvantage. And firms aren't necessarily incentivizing at a every user kind of a level to be using these tools. And so I'm curious what you think about that and how, because the technology side of practice can change, but the practice part could just stay where it is, right? Like, so what if the practice part could keep up with the technology side of things? What do you think is possible there?
Again, just disclaimer, just my opinion. I'm not describing like an objective reality, but many, you know, often when I talk with architects, they have this frustration about, oh yes, the technology seems to be going very fast, but when will I benefit from this? When will I actually get some of this value that the market is now providing? And
because they're waiting for a tool that they can just get off the shelf, right? They're not actually involved in the making or the application of even, I almost wanted to say the application of the technology to their practice, but I almost want to reverse that now and say, how can we manipulate our practice to take advantage of the technology?
I mean, if I was working in a architectural studio, I would actually bring it down to something like, okay, imagine how many software licenses are we paying today? Is there a way that we can pay less licenses? Because, you know, one thing that people say a lot now is SaaS is dead. And the reason they say that is because SaaS is based on the more users use the software, the more you pay me. But now with AI, you don't need many users. You just need one user with AI making the work of 20 users, right? So that's why it's very likely that paying per seat is probably going to disappear, and we will pay for other things. I don't know. We will pay for outcomes, like the more funds you bring in Revit, the more you pay. Maybe.
Tokens. We're going to pay by tokens, Antonio.
Yeah. But if you take advantage of that right now, I would actually ask myself, is there a way that you can actually spend less hours in front of the screen? Is there a way in which you can get the same outcomes by letting AI make the repetitive work? And I don't think you need to be like a geek person to do that. Just open cloud and asking, hey, I'm an architecture studio, this size, these people, these processes, and these licenses. Please help me save money on software. And you can start a conversation and see where it goes. But I would say that that's the lowest hanging fruit now.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of well, you don't have to, but to be in a position that affords you the ability to rethink all of that stuff. And I think that's just overwhelming for people who have weekly deadlines to say, what do you mean I need to rethink everything? I have to deliver this project on Friday, right? Or I have to deliver this deliverable or this milestone, whatever it is, right? This presentation. I think that there's definitely that overwhelming kind of feeling on the practice side of things. They're watching this technology, multiple fire hoses being delivered in all the time if they're paying attention. A lot of people just aren't even paying attention, right? Out of sight, out of mind. I have to do this thing. That's all I'm going to worry about. That's what I'm getting paid to do, actually. So, man, it's a deep problem set or of challenges, and I'm not putting that in a negative way. I'm just saying like it's these issues are there if people are willing to address them.
Yes. I mean, this is very similar to the start of the internet or the discovery of electricity. Many things will change, and yes, that means that some people maybe lose their job, and it is scary, but it also means that it is a time of opportunity, and people who actually find the time to stop and learn these things. And I'm not talking about learning to program, and if they don't want to, I'm talking just opening cloud or opening ChatGPT and start. Take it seriously, right? Like imagine ChatGPT is a $200 an hour consultant that you hire to make your practice save money. What would you tell him and see where that goes?
So you've mentioned cloud a bunch of times, and so I would love to hear for the nerds in the audience, which is most of us, I think, is how are you actually using it? What are you finding? I mean, like I said, the fire hose, right? They keep releasing features. It seems like every week, there's a new diagramming feature. There's a new, now you can pass it off to your mobile. There's all these kinds of things that are just like little things, what seem like little things. But I mean, clearly there's a trajectory here of speed and depth that I don't think we're necessarily used to in the architecture industry, for sure, when it comes to software releases and the cadence of that, but also the power of that. Tell us kind of how you're using these applications. What's the main interface you're in? Are you in Claude Code in the terminal and the CLI? Are you in the desktop application? Are you doing it on the web? Are you using all three kind of in tandem? How does that work for you?
Yes, that's a great question because, I'm also, I usually get frustrated when I try to do something or when I try to do something new, like going to the gym and you suddenly see people with a whole set of rituals, like, yes, I have this special drink and then I have this special clothes and then I do these specific exercises in this specific order. And there's like a whole science around that. But after years going to the gym, I found that literally the only thing that matters is going. It doesn't matter if you just go and do a little adherence, it's called in English. Like that you never stop going. So for cloud, I would say
discipline. Yeah.
It doesn't matter how you start. I think it just matters that you start anyhow, even if it's in a web browser, and then use it one day and another, and then after a week, maybe you try something new. Actually, I don't have anything fancy. I just use Cloud Desktop, big desktop application. it works great for coding, and I can proudly say that I barely code myself now. I direct what Cloud does. So it's like an intermediary. But again, I have to know what it's doing because many times I give him an order or her. I think the other day I read it in theory it's feminine. Anyways, I give it an order, and sometimes he proposes an idea that sounds plausible, but if you know what he's talking about, it's a terrible idea, like terrible idea, and you have to stop it on its track and say, no, don't go this way, go that way. So many times it's just me chatting with it in the desktop.
Yeah. Interesting. For example, one of the things that I didn't even know this existed, but if you use the extension in Chrome, which can then interact with multiple web pages at the same time, for example, there's actually a little button in there that I just didn't even see it before, where you can tell Claude what to do. You click this button, then you go onto the web page and you click these series of buttons for it to do this thing that you do every day, every week, whatever. You teach Claude how to do that, and then you could put that on a schedule and say, do this for me every Monday at 8 a.m., for example.
Yeah,
and it's like just little things like that it's like you have to be in these tools to understand the capabilities that are even possible, and then you figure out how to apply them to your situation. But it's like, it's so easy to miss. And if you're literally not paying attention to these kinds of things, you will not be able to know how to use them. I feel like you just like you said, you have to have the discipline of showing up and trying things, because they literally are changing every single week, and the trajectory is going towards, this is more and more useful, more and more valuable.
Yeah, definitely. It basically allows you to do 20 times more. I have found that it doesn't necessarily mean that you work less. On the contrary.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah, let's talk about that.
It's really, I compare it with a slot machine. It's really addictive because
it totally is a slot machine. Yep.
Yeah, you're right. And then you get instant result, instant gratification. Sometimes it doesn't. So I think it's a bit like a Skinner machine. It generates an action. And the moment you realize that you can do so much, so easily, it's not that you suddenly work 2 hours a day. On the contrary, you work, instead of working 8 hours, you work 10 hours because you're having so much fun and you're so engaged with it. I think that it's two different things. AI can give you, it's a multiplier. It allows you to make a lot more in less time, but it won't help you work less, because working less is a problem of attitude or a problem of how you organize your day, or, what philosophy do you have at work? If you're a workaholic, Cloud will make it work, definitely, in my opinion.
I mean, it's not, the analogy that I would put towards that is BIM. Like when we moved from CAD to BIM, it didn't make things easier. It coordinates the elevations with the sections and the plans and all those things. Yes. And now we're going to put more detail into the drawings, and we're going to zoom in even farther. We're going to make sure that those wall joins are exactly how we want them to be, and this void is cutting the right objects. And there's a level of complexity that comes along with new tools. I think that's one thing that makes AI so exciting, is that it's lowered the barrier, and it's lowered at least the surface level of complexity to, the interface is simple, right? You type into a thing and you have a conversation. You don't just ask questions. You tell it what to do. You tell it what you're looking for. You direct it, like you said earlier. That's a great way to kind of describe what you're doing. Like you're a manager directing an intern or a team of interns, right? Who may or may not be going in the right direction. You're guiding that to happen the way that you want it to unfold. But the layers and layers of complexity have been reduced to this chat window. And for pro tip, the voice stuff is incredible. Like Claude actually has it built in now. You just tap your caps lock key if you're in the desktop application, and you can talk right into Claude. You don't even need a third-party application to talk into that one anymore. Same in the terminal. You enable voice mode, you hold down the space bar, you can talk right into your terminal. Really? Yeah. It's incredible the speed at which, and so like just that alone, I've been using Whisperflow for a lot of the dictation stuff because it's using an AI to figure out what you mean when you say something, and then you say, oh no, that's not what I meant. I meant to say this. And it actually makes it right the first time. You don't even have to go in and correct the text that you dictated into there, and it works in any application, which is another benefit. But it's interesting to think about how this is playing out and how it has lowered the barrier to entry. But there's still that behavior of, okay, this is how we've always worked. These are my deliverables. The frameworks of how we deliver projects hasn't changed. And so we're kind of squeezing this into the efficiency and productivity side of things, but literally the ground is moving underneath the practice of architecture because this applies to every industry out there, not just architecture, right? And so it's going to be changing with these outside pressures. It's going to be changing architectural practice as well.
Yeah. We'll see.
We'll see. All we can do is, pop some popcorn. I mean, participate, but also pop some popcorn and watch, because it is interesting to see how things are changing. And there are firms who are adopting this kind of AI first mentality. I've had people on the show who are doing that. And by AI first, they just mean like defining their practice around the tools that are available today and the direction that those tools are clearly going. It doesn't mean we're using AI for absolutely everything. No, they're actually hiring seasoned architects who know what they're doing so that they can guide that process in that directorial role that you were talking about, that the same way that you use software to write software, right? So.
Yeah. One thing that I want to know is that, and maybe I'm biased because I'm an ex-architect, I have the feeling that the problem for many architectural studios, at least the ones I know, maybe in America it's different, but the ones I know is that they don't have a productivity problem. They have a business management problem. So even if you give these guys like nuclear weapons or the best tools in the world, they don't have, if they have an inefficient business, yes, they will do more, but it won't actually make like a huge change. They will be the same, but now in a spaceship, but basically the same thing. Right. So, I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I feel like that's a great place to cap this conversation off. Antonio, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I applaud the work that you're doing. I mean, it's what you're bringing to the table here is incredibly important, and it may not apply to everybody in the audience of this podcast, but it definitely applies to our industry at the lowest levels, which I think it's very important, the kind of work that you're doing, and I appreciate it. And so I'm very glad that you agreed to come on the podcast and share the work that you're doing. And I'm going to put links to everything that you're doing into the show notes for this episode. But if you want to, I'd love for you to take the opportunity to just kind of share where's the best place for people to follow along with what you're doing, to check out the different tools that you're building, and to even potentially participate in what you're doing because of the open source nature of the project.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much. I would say that the best place to go if you want to get started with what I do is my LinkedIn profile. I am really active in LinkedIn, and also a bit polarizing, which you mentioned briefly at the start. But yes, I share my work, I share my opinions, and to be honest, I also like to have a bit of spicy in what I share, because I think otherwise the industry would be way too boring. I admire BHH, David Heinemeier Hansson, and he says, if you say something everyone agrees with, you're saying something obvious and it's boring. If you say something nobody agrees with, you're crazy and it's boring. But if you say something 70% of the people agree with, but 30% of the people is super angry with you, then you've got something interesting to talk about, right? So that's what I always try to be on that edge, finding interesting things to share. So if anyone wants to, find out more, you can always go to my LinkedIn, add me, speak to me. I don't bite. I'm just a normal guy. So just happy to talk to you.
Yeah, you're an incredibly thoughtful person, and I feel like I agree. I love what DHH is. He is polarizing, but he's just opinionated, and he's also open to changing his opinions over time. I mean, I've watched it unfold for years, following 37 Signals and the books that they've written and all of that kind of stuff. So let's leave this episode with a spicy take. What's your current spicy take, and then we'll open the comments up on the LinkedIn post for this episode. Putting you on the spot, Antonio.
So that I don't know. I would say that the spicy take is that in 2 years, anyone will be able to make BIM software. That's the spicy take.
That is a spicy take because I mean, if you would have said that 2 years ago, you were that crazy person. You just put up the crazy post, right? And now, I bet I wouldn't say 70% of the people are going to agree with that, but 50% probably do. And people who do what you do, I think, are the ones who probably are like, I think he's not that far off. I mean, it is incredible how fast things are moving. And like you said, you think you're going to be able to do that in a week. That makes it even spicier.
I said 2 years, so people can bookmark this moment, and if in 2 years it didn't happen, you can really put me on the spot and say, hey, you made a mistake.
They can roast you on LinkedIn if LinkedIn is still around. I think there'll be LinkedIn competitors if there's going to be BIM competitors by then. So.
Oh, okay.
Well, Antonio, thank you so much. This has been fun. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
If you watched all the way to the end, thank you. That actually means a lot. I have 2 things I'd ask of you before you go. 1, hit subscribe right now if you haven't already. It's totally free. It takes 1 click, and I'm really trying to get to 1,500 subscribers. We're not there yet, and every single one counts. If this show has been worth your time, that's the easiest thing you can do. Number 2, if you want to go further, if you want to support independent coverage of this industry and get ad-free episodes of the podcast, plus my full Leadership Edge newsletter, head over to TRXL.co and click the join button. The link is in the show notes. $12 a month, and you'll be one of the people who actually makes this possible. All right, that's a wrap. Subscribe, share it with someone who would get it, and I'll see you in the next one.